Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm really excited to have over 100 of you here with us, and that number just keeps climbing. So welcome. My name is Emma Gildescame. I coordinate the National 303D TMDL webinar series for New APIC, and I am so happy to have 116 of you and counting on the call today. I have a few announcements before we dive into the main event. To start with, New APIC is a regional commission that helps the states of the Northeast preserve and advance water quality. With support from EPA, we've been running this webinar series since 2016 as part of our work to develop, coordinate, and conduct training programs that serve water quality professionals regionally in the Northeast and nationwide. As always, presentations in this series represent the views of the speaker and don't necessarily reflect New APIC or EPA endorsements or positions. After a year of virtual everything, this GoToWebinar platform may be a refresher for most of you, but just to make sure we have everybody on the same page, you have two options for audio. You can either listen through your computer or you can call in via phone call. If you press this phone call button, you won't be able to hear me for a minute, but it'll give you a phone number and login code that will get you back into the call if you're having computer audio issues. If your computer audio should be fine, check this drop down under the audio tab. It might be connected to a different speaker. Bluetooth headphones are often the culprit here. So do that. If you are still having trouble, we have my colleagues Marianne Dugan and Kale Connerty on the call today. They have very generously offered to help with tech support and the behind the scenes stuff today. If you raise your hand, this little hand with an arrow button, they will go and help you to the best of their ability. I also highly recommend Googling GoToWebinar troubleshooting. They have a lot of really great tools on there. Once you've got your audio figured out, really importantly, ask questions. This chat function has this drop down that says send question to staff. Ask us questions. I will be compiling all of those with help from Marianne and Kale so that we can ask at the end of the presentation. Please ask these. We will do our best to answer as many as possible at the end. Also at the end of the webinar, you'll be prompted to complete a really short survey. This is really just to help us shape the future of the program. We really appreciate your thoughtful input, and it just tells us what you think and what you want to see in the future. If you have really cool ideas for what you want to see in the future of this webinar series, tell us about them. We are always interested in hearing what you want to present on. These proposals can be really informal. We just want to see that you've thought through the idea a bit. Our planning team, which is made up of state, tribe, and EPA 3D program folks from all over the country, has ideated a few topic areas, but we're always open to hearing your ideas, even if they're not on this list. Your proposal can be a case study like the one we'll hear today, or focus on any aspect of these topics from prioritization and listing, modeling and development, implementation, climate resilience. We know that these are all growing issues for many of you, and we want to hear how you're thinking about and wrestling with challenging water quality impairment issues. We have some funding available to pay some speakers. There's more information on that on our website. We've gotten really great submissions, and we encourage you to submit many more. Please reach out to me with questions or ideas. I would love to hear from you on this. We also have another webinar next Monday. This one will be focused on solving impervious cover impairments. Missed a word there, but we'll have presenters from the University of Connecticut, and they should have a lot of interesting things to share. You might be able to go back to the same website that you used to register for this, or you can use that tiny URL on your screen right now to go register for that webinar as well. We also have all of our webinars, including this one after today, recorded, and they all live in perpetuity on our website. There's a lot of really good stuff up there. Check it out. There will also be a link to our website on the post-webinar email that you'll receive just for registering. So without any further ado, let's get to the main event. The story that we're all about to hear is really one about environmental injustice in not just through your 3D implementation, but in the Clean Water Act implementation as a whole. It's a story about what happens when these programs don't protect the people and water that they're supposed to. I hope it'll give us all a lot to think about and some ideas about how to do better, regardless of your role and regardless of what's going on in your neck of the woods. We have a really, really interesting group of people in attendance today. According to the registration information, we have people from 38 states. We have people from EPA, state, tribal, and local governments, schools and academia, environmental organizations, community groups, individuals, and more. This is really wonderful, especially because working to improve justice and equity in the water quality world really needs all of us. We're going to do our best to provide all the information to get us all up to the same page. Thank you for your patience if we give some information that's review or a bit basic for you, but also if we've missed something and there's key information that you'd like us to explain, please ask us. We'll do our best to either respond in the chat or during the Q&A time. We'll leave plenty of time for questions. We'll do our best to get through all of them. Please, please, please ask them in the questions box throughout the presentation. And now, enough out of me. I'm going to hand it over in a moment to Dr. Jacqueline Echols. She's been the board president of the South River Watershed Alliance in Decatur, Georgia for over a decade. She's an experienced environmental advocate with extensive experience working with diverse groups and organizations to achieve environmental goals. At SWRA, she supports community-based organizing and advocacy designed to give voice and raise community awareness concerning legacy water pollution issues affecting underserved urban communities in the city of Atlanta and South DeKalb County. She also works to develop effective partnerships with community, government, for-profit, and nonprofit organizations in support of the goal to improve water quality throughout the watershed. In the past, she served as a spokesperson for Atlanta's Clean Streams Task Force and as a member of the Atlanta Tree Conservation Commission. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Jacqueline Echols. Jackie, it looks like you might be on mute.
There we go. Okay.
There you go.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much, Emma, for that generous introduction. And I am really excited to be here to talk with so many folks today about the South River and the progress we've made towards water quality and some of the obstacles we still face with that endeavor. So the title of my presentation today is TMDL and Environmental Justice, Achieving Better Water Quality Through Respect, Recreation, and Restoration. Next. The first slide you see is just to give you, to orient folks who to the South River Watershed. I want you to keep that visual in mind, you know, when as I introduced you to the watershed in the next slide. But you can see the Atlanta and DeKalb, DeKalb County are quite prominent. The counties downstream that are affected by the South River. Next slide. The South River is one of only 2 urban origin rivers in Georgia. The river begins just north of Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport. It flows east-southeast through the Arabia Mountain National Heritage Area, crisscrossing 6 jurisdictions before ending in Jackson Lake Reservoir 60 miles downstream. From here, the river stretches southeast towards the Atlantic Ocean. The South River has struggled for decades with extreme environmental impacts concentrated in the two most densely populated municipalities in metropolitan Atlanta, Georgia, the city of Atlanta itself and DeKalb County. Located at the top of the South River Watershed, these municipalities are the major sources of pollution affecting water quality in the river. The next photo, and we will talk more about this in a few minutes, is to just kind of give you a quick visual of the TMDL problem that is the topic of the conversation today. As you can see in the bottom corner, the headline is "Frolicking in the Polluted South River." This was actually, as I mentioned, the headline in the July 10th Crossroads newspaper, and this was just prior to the 2010, the announcement of the 2010 DeKalb County federal consent decree. Next slide. There are a lot of folks that may not, or quite a few that may not be familiar with TMDL. So I'm going to provide just a brief overview so that you will be kind of familiar with the terminology. A requirement of the Clean Water Act, total maximum daily load, establishes the amount of pollution a river or stream can assimilate and still meet water quality needed to support the waterway's designated use. As part of the TMDL process, states are required to conduct an evaluation for each waterway that does not support designated use and implement specific remedial actions to reduce the offending pollutants to a level that does not compromise water quality. The South River has never achieved water quality that supports its designated use of fishing. And actually, fishing is the state's lowest designation that allows the highest amount of pollution. The river has been on the state's 303D list of impaired waters since 2002, and that was about the time that the list was created in Georgia. The river's TMDL nemesis, from a recreational standpoint, is fecal coliform bacteria and sediment, or it's also known as total suspended solids, or TSS. Fecal matter attaches to sediment, which is really nothing more than dirt particles, resulting in higher fecal coliform levels. Discharges from the City of Atlanta combined sewer overflow system and the DeKalb County sanitary sewer system are major sources of these two types of pollutants. Next slide. Georgia EPD implemented the TMDL process until about 2007, after which the responsibility was transferred to local governments. For better or worse, these evaluations play a major role in how pollution is managed. The following statements are a consistent refrain in TMDL evaluations that I have reviewed, particularly in preparing for this presentation and to comment on the 2020 draft CSO permit for the City of Atlanta. Non-point sources, those are sources that cannot be traced to a specific origin, are the primary cause of excessive pollution. Point sources, which can be traced to a specific origin, are not significant pollutions, are not a significant pollution source due to the adherence to pollution limits specified in a national pollutant discharge elimination system, which is short acronym NPDES permit, which is issued by Georgia EPD. Any point source pollution loads for wastewater treatment facilities are implemented in the form of water quality-based pollution limits, including in these permits. So to talk about the city of Atlanta for a minute, in terms of the issues with pollution. In 1997, a federal consent decree required Atlanta to fix its combined sewer system. And as a result, the city invested multiple hundreds of millions of dollars in construction to upgrade the system. The legal action for the combined sewer system reportedly closed in 2008. In 1999, the federal court amended the original consent decree and added the city's problem-prone sanitary sewer infrastructure as well, and that deadline is set for 2027. And as you see in the photo, it's a community that just shows CSO flooding. That is an ongoing problem in the city. As I mentioned, Atlanta is in the process of developing the 2020 draft permit, NPDES permit, for the city's combined sewer system. Major emphasis is placed on previous TMDL evaluations for fecal coliform. The 2002 and 2007 TMDL evaluations for Intrenchment Creek and South River recommended that the city's combined sewer system meet water quality standards for fecal coliform at the end of the pipe or the point of discharge into the waterway. The 2002 TMDL evaluation further stated that compliance with the 1997 consent decree between City of Atlanta and EPA will result in the attainment of water quality standards. Now, the 1997 consent decree, as I mentioned, reportedly closed in 2008. A 2018 U.S. EPA Inspector General report, of which I was actually interviewed, titled "Atlanta is largely in compliance with its combined sewer overflow consent decree, but has not yet met all requirements." That report states, Atlanta's CSO system continues to experience periodic violations of its NPDES permits due to high fecal coliform levels, operations-related errors leading to high levels of chlorine in treated wastewater, and missed water quality tests. The report also mentioned that the city's CSO system, sanitary sewer system, continues to also have problems with releases of human waste into city streets and surface waters. So I guess a good question I would ask at this point in looking at these, at the report, and I did ask, is did Atlanta comply with its 1997 CSO consent decree in 2008? Next. Additionally, the TMDL evaluations for sediment or TSS were completed in 2007 and 2017 for Intrenchment Creek and East Area Combined Sewer System. And that's just one combined sewer system. Intrenchment Creek is the major waterway. Atlanta's 2020 draft CSO permit states, both TMDL evaluations recommended that all NPDES discharges meet their current NPDES limits and recommended that there not be an authorized increase in the mass loading of TSS or sediment above that identified in the TMDL. However, the TMDL evaluations did not recommend any load reduction for Intrenchment Creek and did not limit TSS load for the East Area Combined Sewer System permit. And you can see from the photo that sediment turns stormwater runoff into the color of Georgia's red clay. Moreover, when we, in terms of the TMDL evaluations, moreover, the 2010 NPDES permit for Atlanta's combined sewer system contain a performance standard for annual removal of TSS of 60%. This performance standard was removed in the 2015 NPDES permit and replaced with monitoring over strenuous anti-backsliding objections from South River Watershed Alliance and others. Georgia EPD's justification for the removal of TSS limits in Atlanta's 2015 CSO permit was the CSO facility was not equipped to remove sediment or TSS. And this was after, of course, 2008, and reportedly the expenditure of, as I mentioned before, hundreds of millions of dollars upgrading the system as part of the CSO consent decree. As a result of this as a result of not extending the TSS limits to Intrenchment Creek and the CSO system, the sediment pollution increased exponentially. TMDL, allowable total loads of sediment, increased almost threefold for Intrenchment Creek from 2007 to 2017. The sediment loads also doubled, more than doubled, for the South River from during that same period of time. So that particular decision greatly increased sediment pollution and Intrenchment Creek and the South River, and as a result, probably greatly increased the fecal coliform contamination as well. The proposed 2020 draft NPDES permit for Atlanta CSO system retains monitoring requirements for TSS instead of effluent limits. Next. I wanted to share this particular map with everyone because it really, I think, brings home the impact of the CSO system on Intrenchment Creek and the South River. The watershed, the upper Intrenchment Creek watershed, is outlined in purple. And the blue is really all of the streams in the watershed that converge upon Intrenchment Creek. It's roughly 2,600 acres of watershed, of land, and all of the rain that falls on the watershed flows into the East Area Combined Sewer System. Every stream in the Intrenchment Creek watershed is piped until it reaches the Custer Avenue CSO, which is located at the bottom right corner of the photo. This 2,600 acres creates 1.8 billion gallons of stormwater runoff per year and approximately 35 million gallons per 1-inch rain event. This is the source of the total maximum daily load of fecal coliform and total suspended solids for Intrenchment Creek when rainfall exceeds a tenth of an inch. And that is the magic point at which the flow is diverted to the combined sewer system. So for me, it seems impossible, even though stormwater is considered non-point pollution, when it all converges on one point with that kind of magnitude, and it's easy to see the pollution impact that it's got. Addressing it through TMDL limitations should be considered. Next. DeKalb County that we'll look at for next. DeKalb County's sanitary sewer infrastructure has been the major source of sewage pollution affecting the South River since 1961. It's been about 5 decades. In 2010, 5 decades of water quality violations finally attracted the attention of EPA, resulting in a federal consent decree that occurred later that same year. The 10-year federal consent decree deadline of June 2020 did not result in the elimination of sanitary sewer spills in the county. And negotiations are underway to extend the action until 2027. And the photo on the left shows just a chronic site of sanitary sewer spills in DeKalb County. The county finally bought the property, but I'm not sure. No, I do know that the sanitary sewer spills at that site still continue. EPA, Georgia EPD, and DeKalb County failed to include a deadline for the elimination of sanitary sewage spills for the 2/3 of the county where more than 450,000 African Americans live, and the majority of the spills occur. The proposed extensions that the regulators in the county are working on still does not address this environmental injustice. Next. The photos that you're looking at now are shots of the Panola Shows trailhead in South DeKalb County. It's probably the most picturesque site on the South River. And the 2 photos on the left show the park of the trailhead right after it was completed by the Path Foundation. What this did was open the South River up. I mean, prior to the trailhead, the bushes were grown up. You could barely see the river. And you definitely didn't want to venture towards it. But when the trailhead was created, that all changed. But the water quality didn't change. And so, as you might think, this was in July of 2010. It was a particularly hot year in Georgia. And folks who live in the community and those who lived in surrounding communities saw this river and took advantage of it. And it generated a lot of press, a lot of really bad press. And on your left corner of your screen are some of the headlines that appeared in the local newspaper. DeKalb County's reaction to that was to post signs. And as you can see in the one that's shown in the slide, they actually threatened people with prosecution for accessing the waterway. And of course, some people did anyway. And hence the photo at bottom left is just one of many of people in the river. Next. So all of this over the years, kind of culminating in 2010, resulted in what a term that I've created, or to explain what was going on in South DeKalb County, and as decades of relentless pollution that continue to this day have perpetuated a culture of avoidance from which South DeKalb residents and the South River are struggling to overcome. Next. And there are reasons why the citizens of South DeKalb, the residents of South DeKalb County, continue to avoid the river, although that's changing, as we will see a little later. That culture of avoidance was inevitable, given the length of time that pollution has gone on and the extent of the pollution. So sanitary sewer spills are a major source of fecal coliform and sediment pollution entering the South River in South DeKalb County. All of South DeKalb flows to the South River. SSOs are caused by massive amounts of stormwater that infiltrate the county's old and undersized sanitary sewer system. During the 5-year period from mid-2014 to mid-2018, remember the consent decree is in place, over 800 spills of untreated sewage entered tributary streams and the river. The volume of these spills exceeded 27 million gallons. In a 4-day period, the county spilled over 9 million gallons of sewage from the location at the right. And it was actually promoted as one of the solutions to the problem. Building this manhole was supposed to help eliminate sanitary sewer spills from this site, but it hasn't. And the fine for this particular spill was about $2,000. So there's a 9 million gallon spill and all of its impacts, and the only deterrent to that is a $2,000 fine. It's not difficult to see why the problem persists. Next. DeKalb County's sanitary sewer spills are illegal and unregulated point source of pollution that continues unabated under the protection of the county's federal consent decree. There's literally nothing you can do about it because the consent decree is in place. And these spills occur at the same locations over and over again. So once again, I view them as point sources of pollution. There's no doubt where the overflows are going to occur. Gallon for gallon, there is no difference between regulated and unregulated pollution. There is no deadline to stop this pollution and no limit on the amount of pollution that can be discharged into streams and the South River. To enter the triennial review and the process that focuses on the use of the waterway. And a refrain that I've used for a really long time in South DeKalb County with residents of South DeKalb County and others who venture to use use the South River is that you either use it or you're going to lose it. Next. Per Georgia EPD's website, the Watershed Protection Branch manages resources, water resources in Georgia through permits to local governments and industry to discharge treated wastewater and to local governments, industry, farmers, and subdivisions for surface water and groundwater withdrawals. I think it's interesting that this statement does not mention people or recreation or fish or aquatic life or wildlife or the water quality. It's the most important thing, or the water quality needed to support these habitats. Georgia EPD's designated use guidance states that to request a change in designated use, a water body must have already achieved its current designated use, or a TMDL has been developed to bring the water body back into compliance. The federal triennial review process requires that states must evaluate and, if necessary, revise their stream water quality standards based on how citizens are using their waterway. Next slide. So what have we done at South River Watershed Alliance to facilitate the triennial review? Because back in 2010, I realized very quickly that it was key, improving water quality in the South River. It was key that recreational use be established. So in 2010, South River Watershed Alliance launched Clean Rivers 2020, an initiative that was to run in tandem with DeKalb County's 2010 federal consent decree. This initiative was all about recreational use. It was all about increasing, not even increasing, it wasn't a matter of increasing. It was initiating recreational use of the river, because recreational use was virtually unheard of on the South River in 2010, and any time prior to 2010. Our first project, go back to the one before Emma, yeah. Our first project was the South River Water Trail. It's an initiative launched in 2011 to ensure safe and legal access to the river through the construction of put-in and take-out landings along the river's 40-mile navigable route. We're actually excited about the first section of the water trail that's being developed in Rockdale County, which is immediately downstream from DeKalb. And hopefully within the next year it will be online. And we are also working to establish the water trail in DeKalb County, just in the city of Stonecrest. So this initiative has attracted a lot of attention and a lot of excitement amongst folks in the community that live in the community, and those who are looking for alternatives for water recreation. Next. The second initiative we implemented in 2011 was Beyond the Bridge. And that was kind of a description I had of how folks typically had always viewed the South River. You might have seen it from the bridge, but that was about it. So from a recreational standpoint, this effort was designed to get people actually on the river. So it was initiated in 2011. It has made possible for a diverse group of individuals from all socioeconomic and age groups, many of whom had never kayaked or canoed before, to experience the river. When I started this effort, I wasn't sure. As a matter of fact, I was really worried about how successful this initiative might be. Particularly in South DeKalb County, where there was not a large group of folks that engaged in kayaking and canoeing. It's a very non-traditional population, but the enthusiasm has been wonderful. I mean, this photo that you're looking at is just one example of the diversity of use of the river that has grown up around our canoe and kayak program. Next slide. In 2018, in an effort to formally document use of the river, which we need for the triennial review, we implemented South River Check-in, which is an online process for anyone to on the website to let us know that they visited the river and what kind of activity they engaged in. It might not all be just recreational. I mean, there's plenty of bird watching and animal watching. I mean, there's a lot of things near and on the river to do. So we wanted to be sure that we were able to document that. Next. So we are doing a lot. We are making progress, engaging the community around use, around recreational use. But as you can see from the presentation thus far, water quality is still a major issue and a major concern. So we need help. We need help from those who are responsible for improving water quality. And so we have more questions than answers right now. And some of those questions are, is the City of Atlanta meeting water quality criteria at the end of the pipe for fecal coliform as recommended in 2002 TMDL recommendations, and they were required in 2007 TMDL, in the 2007 TMDL evaluation? Has compliance with Atlanta's consent decree resulted in the obtainment of water quality standards for fecal coliform as stated in the 2002 TMDL evaluation? Why did the 2007 and 2017 TMDL recommendations for sediment exclude Intrenchment Creek and the East Area Combined Sewer System? What designated use and water quality alternatives are available for the river as a result of the sediment TSS exclusion? Is Atlanta's 1997 CSO consent decree open or closed? That's a big deal. If the 1997 CSO consent decree is open, what are the impacts of ongoing consent decree work on current enforcement and compliance with pollution limits and water quality standards for fecal coliform and sediment. Next. Why does Atlanta's 2020 draft CSO permit contain more stringent year-round fecal coliform limits for the West Area CSO system on the Chattahoochee River and less stringent seasonal limits on the East Area CSO system, which is on the South River? How are conflicts between TMDL recommendations and regulatory compliance resolved? And finally, why has Georgia EPD not performed a use attainability analysis to determine the designated use the South River can attain as required under the Clean Water Act? These are just some of the questions that need to be answered, and I think deserve to be answered, and provide kind of follow up with the community in terms of answers. So 10 years ago, when I began working on this issue, I needed to make sense, or try to make sense, of the decades-long relentless pollution of the South River. I mean, you know, 1961 to 2010 is a long time. And the river was polluted relentlessly for all of that time. An extensive internet search led me to Dr. Sharon Moran and her research. And I think it's insightful. It really, it's you know, Dr. Moran has been my muse. In her work entitled Cities, Creeks, and Erasure, Stream Restoration and Environmental Justice, she asked the question, how might the lens of environmental justice be used to understand and improve stream restoration projects? Her insights are instructive for, I think, for understanding the South River's struggle with water quality and why recovery has been so difficult and so important. Some of them are short-sighted ideas about what constitutes a worthy stream restrict the imagination of both restoration professionals and community residents. And I would also add to this, regulators, because there is just no doubt that the South River is not viewed as a stream that's worthy of restoration. The more degraded the natural environment, the more difficult it is to even consider renaturalizing it. Quite simply, pollution begets pollution. And the more you pollute, the more you're likely to pollute. And that is certainly the history of the South River. Streams with low water quality parameters are designated not amenable to restoration. And with the amount of pollution that the South River has received and continues to receive, water quality is affected, which makes it even less amenable to restoration. This means that certain streams will be simply written off and not even considered for improvement. And as Dr. Moran says, no community deserves to be discarded. The phenomena that I just mentioned, she refers to as erasure, which I think, accurately describes what's going on with the South River. Next slide. She also states that one of the special benefits of urban projects is their proximity to population centers. However, stream restoration remains relatively lacking in urban areas where people, especially poor and minority populations, are concentrated. A community that sees its own local environmental condition as normal and inevitable will be hopeless and therefore unlikely to act politically by demanding the enforcement of environmental regulations, for example, or insisting on a voice in improving the condition of the waterway. I think the description or the presentation I just made speaks for itself, and I hope that in terms of answering the questions and helping with the restoration of the South River, that EPA and Georgia EPD are listening. My sincere thanks to all who attended the webinar today. And I will take questions.
Thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. I'm sure we're all standing ovation behind our screens. This is the downside of a webinar. We have by far the most common question that has been coming in is summed up really well by Muli Panit, who said, how can citizens who live in the South River watershed get involved in protecting the river? Several other people also asked more broadly of how we, the public, regardless of where we live, can help.
What we've done besides the recreational use has been to engage folks, and it's a lot of work on the part of South River Watershed Alliance, but we've engaged them in the TMDL process. We've engaged them in the 2020 draft permit for Atlanta's combined sewer system, by asking them to, provide a comment, and we provide the framework for the comment. So that's working, getting folks involved, but a lot of times there are the conflicting information around around water quality, around why it continues, around why South DeKalb County was left out of the 2010 consent decree and the impact that will have on water quality. I think these are questions that EPA and EPD will need to answer, and I can say the community is engaged. I mean, we have the participation in our recreational events. It's wonderful. I mean, folks want to use their river. They should be allowed to use their river, but we need to get some clarity on this water quality, on water quality, so that people will feel confident about using the river. So in terms of what's going on in South DeKalb County, I can only say continue to do what you're doing, because the participation, the public participation around this is dramatically improved. But we need some positive information to share. I mean, it's kind of hard to keep people engaged around an issue when it's very difficult to provide, you know, some uplifting, positive info about change.
Great, thank you for that. We have a lot of people who are talking about how to best support, and we also have the director of SRWA pointing out that I forgot to switch to this slide. So if you have more information about how to get involved with the South River Watershed Alliance, that website is a great place to start. We have tons of questions rolling in. I think a really great one, there's a lot of really great ones. There are a lot of staff from state TMDL programs on the call. And this question is asking, what recommendations can you offer for how state staff can use the TMDL process to achieve a better outcome for communities like the ones in the South River?
I think just really being open about the process. The problem I run into with the TMDL is just kind of, it's presented, the evaluations are presented as if they are self-enforcing or faceless, and they aren't. I mean, they come from a source. And of course, implementation of TMDL suggestions or recommendations, you know, are critical. And then follow-up is also critical. So, you know, really just navigating, you know, the regulatory process. I mean, I can send emails, you know, all day long to Georgia EPD, you know, for information. But it's guarded information, and what I try to get over to the folks that I talk with is just, look, my goal is not a gotcha. You know, my goal is to see how we can improve the rivers. So to answer the question, I think just being, not to just state what's in the TMDL, but be able to share how it's been effective, because it's the effectiveness of all of this is what will build confidence among communities that want to, and people who want to use the river. I mean, be a supporter. Of course, you've got to believe that the river is better or deserves to be better. I mean, so it takes some positive action. But I think that's what needs to show up. Just how is the TMDL process improving the rivers? Because if it's not, why do it?
That's a good question. There was actually a couple along that vein, so hopefully that was helpful for all of our state TMDL folks. On a kind of getting involved level, is there citizen science currently working to sample the river and test water quality?
Yeah, we do water quality testing. Before COVID, we were doing it once a month, because again, I saw that as a real need. There needs to be more testing than once a month. And the city of Stonecrest, where the river, the navigable section of the river is in DeKalb County, is working with the county to get water quality data. that we would be interested in posting on our website so that they can see just what water quality looks like. That's also an incentive to improve water quality. But these are new initiatives. The reason we started water quality testing last year was because we couldn't get it from the county. We couldn't get it from DeKalb County to post. So there has to be transparency here. And that's the problem. There is just a history of lack of transparency. It has led to a lot of the problems in South DeKalb County. Because when you look at the level of pollution and who lives there, there's an automatic question: why? It doesn't look like that on the Chattahoochee side of the city. It doesn't, and there's a reason for that, which is, as I said before, why Dr. Moran's piece, and I hope you share it with folks and let them read it. It's so insightful, because when you talk about erasure, when you talk about not amenable to restoration, I really do believe that that's the view of some regulators, that the city of Atlanta has more of a right to pollute than folks downstream have a right to expect good water quality for recreation.
And for those of you who are interested in reading that excellent article, there is a PDF of it in the handout section of your GoToWebinar tab. Also, Googling the title of the article is also a good way to find it online. And we actually have Dr. Moran with us today, so thank you for being here. Wow, there's a whole bunch of questions in here that are thank you for the wonderful presentation. So thank you for the wonderful presentation. A lot of sentiments about being interested in helping. And again, for anybody interested in getting more involved, check out the website on your screen right now. Another really, I think, important question is about these enforcement penalties. So do you feel that having heavier enforcement penalties, so fines that are more than that $2,000 for, I believe it was 9 million gallons of overflow, do you think that would help move towards better attainment of water quality standards?
No doubt about it. There aren't but so many options available to regulators, available to EPA to compel compliance, whether it's the city of Atlanta or DeKalb County. And one of them is stipulated penalties. And they have to be significant enough to make it, for it not to be an inducement to keep polluting. And that's what $2,000 does for a 9 million gallon spill. Because no matter what the amount is, $2,000 is not an incentive. It's an incentive to pollute, if anything. Yeah. So no doubt. And we've raised that issue with regulators. We raised it. I have raised it with EPA. I don't know what was the thinking in 2010 when the DeKalb County consent decree was negotiated, where obviously purposely 2/3 of the county, which happens to be Black, was left out of the consent decree. So there's no deadline to eliminate sanitary sewer spills, which means the pollution will continue. So there are a lot of things that need to be made right here that are really very wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. So we also have a couple of questions about the use attainability analysis.
Right.
And there was some a little bit of confusion about these as usually being used to demote a water body's use, and kind of wondering about the ways that SRWA is thinking about the way that a use sustainability analysis would fit into this watershed.
Because I want to know what it is. I want to know the reason why pollution has gone on for so long. I want to know if for certain the river is viewed as not amenable to restoration because of pollution sources, because then I have a target, right? I have a target. Then I can target the city of Atlanta or DeKalb County. And I would fight just ferociously fight any effort to have the water quality lowered. Well, it can't be lowered, number one. It's the lowest use now, and it doesn't meet its designated use even at that lowest level. So really, the attainability analysis would provide info, and really for me, it would almost chart a way forward in a positive route, because then I can address what's behind all of this pollution.
Yeah. There's another question that's kind of related to the kind of feasibility of improvements, and it's generally, has there been any work done about what actually would need to happen to achieve water quality improvements? If all the work to date hasn't done it, what would it take?
Well, I'm not sure how much work has been done. As I said, the DeKalb County sanitary sewer spills have been going on since the 60s. The consent decree was supposed to be for me. It was weak, but it's the law, right? And the Clean Water Act is supposed to apply to everyone. It's protection under the law. So you just can't arbitrarily deny, an entire community of folks protection under the Clean Water Act. So some things have to happen. The same in the city of Atlanta. I'm not convinced Atlanta in any way is meeting the requirements of its MPDES permit. I would need to see that. The EPA IG says that there are problems. So what do those problems look like on the ground? Or look like at the CSO discharge? And that goes to the transparency. But information, I think, for me and South River Watershed Alliance and the public, it would be kind of the ammunition that we need, because then you have a point of focus. Right now, it's just the river is not meeting even the lowest use, with no real explanation as to why.
Yeah. Still have some good questions in here. I encourage people to keep submitting questions. We have one asking if the South River or any of the other tributaries part of EPA's Urban Waters Federal Partnership.
No, we are not part of that. I know some of my sister groups, West Atlanta Watershed Alliance, were part of that effort. But I'm always interested in any opportunity for the South River, because, as I said, the whole focus is improving water quality.
Yeah. And I think another comment from Margaret Spalding at the South River Watershed Alliance is adding that really you guys are the only organization fighting for the river, and it sounds like that means across the board, not just from the nonprofit side, and that it's a small group and you guys have been able to do a lot, but I think joining partnerships like that is a great idea. So thank you for that suggestion, somebody in the comments. There's a question about the specific, the link to the TMDL, and if we could provide a handout or a link to the original TMDL. I encourage you to find it online, but Jackie, does it, can you kind of detail a little bit what the cause of the pollution is in the TMDL?
In the draft 2020 draft permit, the big focus is TSS and fecal coliform. And from a recreational standpoint, that's the key to it all. Because when you talk with people who use the river, when you talk with officials, county officials, it all focuses on fecal coliform. I mean, that is the pollutant that that EPD targets, and rightly so. I mean, you know, there are public health concerns related to fecal coliform. So, you know, from a TMDL standpoint, it's the fecal coliform and the TSS, as I said, because because sediment exacerbates the fecal coliform levels. So those, from a recreational standpoint, I mean, there are other water quality issues, you know, that affect macroinvertebrates and fish. But in terms of recreation, and I think that is the key ingredient here to ensure that achieving water quality from the standpoint of TSS and fecal coliform is kind of what will propel the continued and more expansive improvements with water quality.
Yeah, and it looks like the kind of follow-up questions, just to be really clear, are there sources aside from the sewer overflows, both combined and sanitary, or are those the main sources of pollution in the river?
Well, you have of course, stormwater runoff. But remember, you have to eliminate your sources of pollution, right? And so if I could say with certainty that Atlanta's combined sewer system is meeting water quality standards, as indicated, you know, their discharges are supposed to meet water quality standards. If I had certainty about that, if we could eliminate or get some real force behind the consent decree in DeKalb County to eliminate sanitary sewer spills, then we can start to look at where else to go, because I know those are major sources.
Yeah. On a slightly brighter note, do you find that interest in and care for the river has grown as more people have gotten out recreating on and near it?
Oh yeah, no doubt. And folks keep coming back, you know. From a recreational standpoint, we can use the river. And we do. I mean, because you're in a kayak, you're not in the water. But even though that's the case, when people still have that concern, and you know, and that's what we're trying to overcome with the better water quality, so that folks can internalize that it's safe to use the South River, to start to undercut what is still an enormous amount of really bad press, of really bad views of held by the community as it relates to the South River. You know, so many people still think that it's polluted beyond repair because, you know, it always has been. And but think about this: no matter the improvements, and now there are so many sources of pollution for a water body, right? And so even if we could say that the South River meets fishing, that's an improvement. But to say after all of this time, it doesn't even meet the lowest use, that should cause concerns on the part of EPA and EPD.
Yeah.
Because they should be about water quality. You know, it's environmental protection. That's the name. So, you know, that's what people want to hear from when it comes to making the river better.
Yeah. There's still a lot of good questions coming in. Actually, really related to that, one of the questions that people submitted in advance had to do with exactly this piece of whether it's safe. This came from a person who lives near the water, and they see people swimming in it all the time, and their kids want to play in it, but this person's worried that it's not safe to let their kids play in it. How do you manage kind of tricky things of the water is still really polluted, but also go out and hang out in it because there's ways to do it safely? How do you thread that needle?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, and that's an education. That's really providing folks with education. You know, I don't believe the times that the South River are most impacted have to do with rain events. You know, CSOs kick in with rain events. DeKalb County sanitary sewer spills kick in with rain events. And outside of those time periods, intuitively, you would think that water quality is fine. And that just takes testing and sharing it with the community. I mean, we test at Panola Shoals, and if the water is high from rain, fecal counts are high. If the water is low, the water quality is fine. And we just need to better communicate that to folks. And on top of that, as I've mentioned, if that's the case, and the South River is good for recreation outside of rain events, then again, that's a place to start. So it's not all of the time, and that's the perception that a lot of folks, and including local government officials, have of the river, and it's not true. So it's an educational challenge, but it also speaks to the fact that if in fact that is the case, then not meeting the designated use, there's an answer to that somewhere, and that's the answer that from a water quality standpoint, from an organizational standpoint, I need to understand. Why is it that the South River does not meet its designated use, even at the minimum level?
Yeah. And Margaret Spalding also wants to make sure that it's on the record that SRWA does not recommend swimming in the river.
Right.
Yeah, just
No.
wants to make on the record, according to my questions box. But yeah, no, I think that the idea of education and the relationship of the pollution levels and rain is a really important point. Another question, I know that we are running low on time, but we still have some time for questions. Kind of switching gears to other types of pollution. Are environmental groups, either SRWA or others in the Atlanta area, interested in kind of looking into the trash problems in the waterways? Now, this is a huge problem in a lot of, especially urban rivers. And could there also be a trash impairment in the future?
Well, yeah, we have a trash initiative. As a matter of fact, we're in the process working with DeKalb County, who's been a really good partner. The terrible in water quality, but they've been a really good partner on the trash issue. We are installing a bandalong, huge bandalong system on the South River at the South River Wastewater Treatment Plant that will catch a lot of the trash coming out of Atlanta, which should dramatically improve water quality. We got delayed, of course, with COVID, but that implementation process is moving along, and I'm hoping, by summer we will start to see some work on the ground. It was an expensive venture. It's a $500,000 investment by DeKalb County, to their credit, as I said, to help deal with the trash problem in the South River.
Great, that's super exciting. Hold on, I just had another question that got lost. Oh, the question was back to the kind of more technical pieces of the consent decree. What was what was required of the county and the city in correcting the sewer system? Were they required to separate sanitary and storm sewer, or what other measures were required?
Well, DeKalb County, with the city of Atlanta, they did separate, and we fought hard for it, and we fought hard to get the entire city separated. But we failed at that. But we did get some basins, sub-basins separated, and South River benefited from that. Once again, why is it still that nothing is working for the South River? Several CSO outfalls were taken offline. So now Intrenchment Creek is the only CSO discharge on the South River. There used to be 3, so now there's only 1. And so you would think that would improve water quality. But it hasn't, which, as I said, gets back to my point. And working with the EPA, EPD, Georgia EPD, to figure out why is South River different. As I mentioned, even in the 2020 draft permit for the CSO system, it's only one CSO system, right, in Atlanta. There's one. There's more stringent. There are more stringent fecal coliform levels on the west side, on the Chattahoochee, than on the South River side. Same 2020 draft permit. They're a lot more less restrictive on the South River side, which only increases pollution.
Yeah.
So there are a lot, as I said in the presentation, we have a lot more questions than we have answers, and answers are what we need.
Yeah. I have no idea what this question is about, but how will the South River be impacted by the passage of Georgia House Bill 511?
Oh, tell me which one that is. I've been so focused on it.
I have no idea. Well, in that case,
Oh,
that's a good
oh,
question for later.
I think that's the trust fund bill, if I remember correctly, that requires the state of Georgia to stop siphoning off money that's being contributed to various trust funds, environmental trust funds. And that will benefit the South River, because the headwaters of the South River has serious issues now. You know, that's way upstream, but we work on that as well, because the headwaters of the South River is a class 1 hazardous site. It's on the hazardous site inventory as a class 1 site, which is the highest level of pollution. But there's work being done on that by EPD upstream in the headwaters. So it will benefit, because that site has been in need of remediating, and they are working on it for 25 years now. A long time.
Great. And it looks like I'm going to unmute Margaret so she can join in this conversation. I should have to go find her. But Margaret Spalding of the South River Watershed Alliance says it's for cleanups. So I'm glad that you guys knew, and now all you all who are in Georgia know a little bit more about the local legislation that's going to impact this. Hold on. And Margaret, you are now unmuted, so you should be able to say hello to everybody. Let me see if there's more questions that I missed. There's a lot of related questions. If I haven't gotten your question all the way answered, please throw it in again. Otherwise, we can wrap up. Give it another like 10 seconds for questions. Okay, well, thank you all for being here. Thank you so much, Jackie, for a wonderful presentation and for all of the time that you've put into sharing this with all of us. Again, if you have any more questions or comments, please don't hesitate to reach out to me about the webinar series. I will put, there we go. There's Dr. Jacqueline Echols' email address as well, and information on how to learn more about the South River Watershed Alliance. You will get a follow-up email from GoToWebinar tomorrow, I believe, or later this week. That will also have a webinar recording. Feel free to share that with whoever you think might be interested. I hope you all have a fantastic day and look forward to seeing you at future webinars.
Thank you so much, Emma.
Bye, everybody.